Good evening, and welcome to celebrate this wintry holiday here in snowy Stockholm with the Hearts of Iron team. To celebrate this holiday, I will be reading you a Christmas story about an unexpected truce that took place on the winter of 1944 during the Battle of the Bulge. It was Christmas Eve, and the last German Western offensive of World War II raged around our tiny cabin. Suddenly there was a knock on the door. When we heard the knock on our door, that Christmas Eve, 1944, neither Mother nor I had the slightest inkling of the miracle that laid before us. I was 12 then, and we were living in a small cottage in the Hurtgen forest near the German-Belgian border. Father had stayed at the cottage on hunting weekends before the war. When the Allied bombers partially destroyed our hometown of Aachen, he sent us there to live. He had been ordered into the Civil Defense Fire Guard in the border town of Monschau, 4 miles away. "You'll be safe in the woods," he had told me. "Take care of Mother." But 9 days before Christmas, Field Marshal von Rundstedt had launched the Ardennes Offensive, the last German offensive on the Western Front. And now, as I went to the door, the Battle of the Bulge was raging all around us. We heard the incessant booming of field guns. Planes soared continuously over our heads. At night, the searchlights stabbed into the darkness. Thousands of Allied and German soldiers were fighting all around us. When that first knock came, Mother quickly blew out the candles. Then, as I went to answer it, she stepped ahead of me and pushed open the door. Outside, like phantoms against the snow-clad trees, stood 2 steel-helmed men. One of them spoke to Mother in a language we did not quite understand, pointing to a third man laying in the snow. She realized before I did that these 3 men were American soldiers. Mother stood silently, motionless, her hand on my shoulder. They were armed and could have forced their entrance, yet they stood there and asked with their eyes, and the wounded man seemed more dead than alive. "Kommt rein," Mother said finally. "Come in." The soldiers carried their comrade inside and stretched him out on my bed. None of them understood German. Mother tried French, and one of the soldiers could converse in that language. We learned that the stocky, dark-haired fellow was Jim. His friend, tall and slender, was Robin. Harry, the wounded one, was now sleeping on my bed, his face as white as the snow outside. They'd lost their battalion and had wandered in the forest for 3 days looking for the Americans, hiding away from the Germans. They hadn't shaved, but still, without their heavy coats, they looked merely like big boys. And that was the way Mother began to treat them. "Now," Mother said to me, "go get Hammond and bring 6 potatoes." This was a serious departure from our original pre-Christmas plans. Herman was the plump rooster that we had been fattening for weeks in the hope that Father would be home for Christmas. But some hours before, when it was obvious that Father would not make it, Mother had decided that Herman should live a while longer in case he would make it home for New Year's Eve. Now, she had changed her mind again. Herman would serve an immediate, pressing purpose. While Jim and I helped with the cooking, Robin took care of Harry. He had a bullet through his upper leg and had almost bled out. Mother tore a bedsheet into long strips of bandages. Soon, the tempting smell of roast chicken permeated our room. I was setting the table, and once again there came a knock at the door. Expecting to find more lost Americans, I opened the door without hesitation. There stood 4 soldiers, wearing uniforms that I was quite familiar. These were Germans, Wehrmacht. I was paralyzed with fear. Although still a child, I knew the harsh laws. Sheltering enemy soldiers constituted high treason. We could all be shot. Mother was frightened too. Her face was white, but she stepped outside and said quietly, "Frohlichen Weihnachten." The soldiers wished her a Merry Christmas too. "We have lost our regiment and would like to wait for daylight," explained the corporal. "Can we rest here?" "Of course," Mother replied, with a calmness born of panic. You can also have a fine, warm meal and eat till the pot is empty. The Germans smiled, smelling the aroma through the half-open door. But, Mother added firmly, we have 3 more guests, whom you may not consider friends. Now her voice was suddenly sterner than I had ever heard before. This is Christmas Eve, and there will be no shooting here. Who's inside? The corporal asked. Amerikanen? Mother looked at each frost-chilled face. Listen, she said shortly. You could all be my sons, and so could they be in there. A boy with a gunshot wound, fighting for his life, and his 2 friends, lost like you and just as hungry and exhausted as you are. This one night, she turned to the corporal and raised her voice a little. This Christmas night, let's forget about killing. The corporal stared at her. There were 2 seconds or 3 of silence. Then Mother said, enough talking, and clapped her hands sharply. Please, put your weapons here on the wood pile, and hurry up before the others eat the dinner. Dazedly, the 4 soldiers placed their arms on the pile of firewood just inside the door. Meanwhile, Mother was speaking French rapidly to Jim. He said something in English, and to my amazement, I saw the American boys too turn their weapons over to Mother. Now, as the Germans and Americans tensely rubbed elbows in the small room, Mother was really on her mettle. Never losing her smile, she tried to find a seat for everyone. We had only 3 chairs, but Mother's bed was big, and on it she placed 2 of the newcomers side by side with Jim and Robin. Despite the strained atmosphere, Mother went right on preparing the dinner. But Herman wasn't gonna grow any bigger, and now there were 4 more mouths to feed. Quickly, she whispered to me, get more potatoes and some oats. These boys are hungry, and a starving man is an angry one. While foraging in the storage room, I heard Harry moan. When I returned, one of the Germans had put his glasses to inspect the American's wound. Do you belong to the medical corps? Mother asked. No, he answered. But I studied medicine at Heidelberg until a few months ago. Thanks to the cold, he told the Americans in what sounded like fairly good English. Harry's wound hadn't become infected. He is suffering from a severe loss of blood, he explained to Mother. What he needs is rest and nourishment. Relaxation was now beginning to replace suspicion. Even to me, all the soldiers looked very young as we sat there together. Heinz and Willy, both from Cologne, were 16. Their German corporal, at 23, was the oldest of them all. From his food bag he drew a bottle of red wine, and Heinz managed to find a loaf of rye bread. Mother cut that small pieces to be served with the dinner. Half of the wine, however, she put away for the wounded boy. Then Mother said grace. I noticed that there were tears in her eyes as she said the old familiar words, Come, Herr Jesus, be our guest. And as I looked around the table, I saw tears too in the eyes of our guests. Some from America, some from Germany, all far from home. Just before midnight, Mother went to the doorstep and asked us to join her to look up to the Star of Bethlehem. We all stood beside her, except Harry, who was sleeping. For all of us during the moment of silence, looking at the brightest star in the heavens, the war was a distant, almost forgotten thing to us. Our private armistice continued the next morning. Harry woke in the early hours and ate some broth that Mother fed him. With the dawn, it was apparent that he was becoming stronger. Mother now made him an invigorating drink from our 1 egg, the rest of the corporal's wine, and some sugar. Everyone else had oatmeal. Afterwards, 2 poles and Mother's best tablecloth was fashioned into a stretcher for Harry. The German corporal then advised the Americans how to find their way back to their lines. Looking over Jim's map, the corporal pointed out a stream. "Continue along this creek," he said, "and you will find the American First Army regrouping over here." Now Mother gave them all back their weapons. "Be careful, boys," she said. "I want you to get home someday where you belong. God bless you all." The German and American soldiers shook hands, and we watched them disappear in opposite direction. When I returned inside, Mother had brought out the old family Bible. I glanced over her shoulder. The book was open to the Christmas story, the birth in the manger, and how the wise men came from afar bearing gifts. Her finger was tracing the last line from Matthew 2:21. They departed into their own country another way. And that is where I leave you all with this heartfelt story. Now we lay aside our equipment and take a break for the holiday. And of course, from all of us here at the Hearts of Iron team, we wish you all happy holidays.